Except it's okay to say it started when mom had a flag. It's one more kid than she thought she would. It was anything but playing Brotherhood. Go! Play Brotherhood! Play Brotherhood! Nick are out of control. They would crash the airwaves with a microphone. So sit down tight and listen close. So the ladies now take off your clothes. Play Brotherhood! Play Brotherhood!
Trying to think of if I can even remember the first time that we met Nick and Pat. I guess it was a long time ago, early 90s. We were kids when we knew them.
I have early memories, but I don't remember how we met them.
I just remember because we were going to the Fircrest congregation there in Tacoma of Jehovah's Witnesses, and they were a new family that had moved from wherever they originally came from.
Yeah.
And Nick and Pat...
Or had we just gone to the Fircrest congregation? Or that's where we always went.
That's where we had started going when Mom started going to meetings again. So they came, and all of a sudden they were kids that were approximately our age and novelly shared our name, which is why people automatically associated us as the quirky, I don't know what.
Yeah.
Nick and Pat and Pat.
Yeah, which meant that everyone started calling me Pat, which was awful.
Yeah, you don't like Pat.
Although we did have the same two names. He and I were Patrick James.
Yeah. So I could see that it's coincidental, but people eventually needed to get over it. And
who is that guy that used to always say Nick and Nick, Nick and Pat, Pat and Nick?
That would have been Brother Gritton from...
Oh, yeah, Ken Gritton.
Yeah.
Nick and Pat, Pat and Nick.
So we did become friends with them, but not really good friends. Like, I remember Mom and Dad would have the occasional card party or barbecue or something, which is weird to think about. Like, because they were so socially retarded.
Yeah, but... You make friends in the congregation, I guess.
You have to, because you're not allowed to outside of that.
Yeah.
But I remember us being really excited. We'd only see them like at conventions for Jehovah's Witnesses after we moved to that other house, because we moved out of the district, I guess is what it is.
Right.
So we would only see them when there was a party or there was a convention where all Jehovah's Witnesses got together. And we were always super stoked to hang out with them because they were basically the only friends we'd made outside of each other.
Right.
And not so much Pat. Like, Pat was a weirder kid growing up.
Yeah, and I always got stuck with him because we were in the same age and had the same name. And even into the teenage years, you and Nick would always pawn me off on him. I was trying to glom onto you guys.
Because we were a lot cooler.
Yeah, yeah. You'd phase me out, and you'd put me with Pat, and he and I did not get along very
Pat's
well.
got... I don't know how Patrick is. I know he has a beard now. I saw his MySpace picture.
I think he's pretty awesome now. The last couple times, they're weird. Like, they really don't want to talk anymore.
To us?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I don't know.
I think it's one of those things where it's just like, you know what, we're not really friends anymore. We haven't seen each other in years. It's awkward when we
do.
out.
Yeah, it's been a few years. Was the last time at that... I don't know the last time I even saw either of them. But... It's just weird now, but once Nick got a car, which was right around when he was 16, and he was almost exactly my age, then we started seeing them more, because then, we had a way of transportation, him, for everything that we wanted to do, and aside from Simon, another friend that he'd had, who he kind of had to keep on the down low, because he wasn't a Jehovah's Witness, it was just a kid he met through high school. But, so, yeah, that's when we really started hanging out a lot with them again, I guess. And, yeah.
Even before that, though, like, there would still be ways where they'd still end up coming to our house a lot. Right before he
had
got
a
the
car?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't really remember.
There were times, because I remember, like, being with him doing, like, the walk into Fred Meyer and hanging out for hours and hours.
That's true. And then, but once he had a car, we didn't have to do that anymore. But they would spend, like, all kinds of nights at our house, and we would just go do, like, nothing rebellious or fun, as we should have been doing at that age, really. It's like, hey, let's go drive to Sherry's, because it's the only place open 24 hours, and drink not alcohol, and... talk about nothing, Teen Wolf and Teen Wolf 2.
Yeah, but it was
which
awesome.
is the better. Yeah, we had a lot of fun. But Nick was always, like, we're socially strange, but Nick was at a whole other level, like legitimate panic attacks and breaking into sweats,
Right, especially around girls.
Especially around girls.
He had a lot of like self-conscious things. He was very hairy. Mm-hmm. He was very short.
Yes, he's still both of those things, I'm sure.
Yeah, he used to be a lot fatter than he is now.
Mm-hmm.
He was never like fat. Pat was, but not Nick.
No.
And yeah, I don't know, but he was so hilarious though. I remember like the camping trips the most. Like that's when he would really be funny because you'd see him around his parents like the entire time, more than us just going to Sherry's. Like now we were seeing Nick getting yelled at by his dad,
which was always
how
hilarious.
Weird his mom was.
That was the thing about Nick was that me and you considered him to be the most hilarious guy in the world.
Yeah.
But his sense of humor was so weird, and we only hung out with each other, so nobody else really got it. But God, was he fucking funny, man. And mainly just the way his self-criticism was always pretty funny. But then also, the camping trips are a good example. I'm trying to think of a good story.
He had voices. He'd always do the Italian voice because he thought he looked very Italian. He convinced himself he was Italian. He thought he could be an opera singer at one point.
Yeah, he would tell us seriously too, and that's why it was especially funny that he'd be in the shower, like in the morning, getting ready for school, and he would sing opera music to himself that he's making up. It's not any real. He doesn't even know what opera is. And he says, but sometimes I listen, it's just the echo off the walls, and I think I can do it. I really do. And I believe that he could. And he used to, like, air guitar to his CDs, jumping on his bed, and really visualize that he was in a band. I remember one time we were in the car with him, and he was driving, so this is how old he is. And he's telling me about how sometimes when he's bored at work, he'll daydream about Blink-182's drummer dropping out and him needing to take over. And he's never played drums, but he thinks it could happen.
Nick, you think you can help us out?
And then that leads to thoughts about how much he's going to get laid as a result of being in a band. But Nick was super, super freaked out when it came to girls.
Yeah.
But it was weird. I think the first good example is our cousin April. That's when I really saw what a freak he was firsthand when it came to girls.
Yeah, it was to the point where it was like scary. He had crushes on girls. Like there was some girl.
Let's go through them individually, starting with April.
No, not before April. Who was that girl that her name was?
Oh, Amber.
Amber, yeah.
Yeah, that was a girl that he'd known basically since he joined the religion. So from like 11 to 16, he was obsessed with this girl,
and
who was never cute, right?
Right. No, I don't think so.
I don't know what he saw in that one.
He had written some like pretty gross poetry about her and stuff.
I think he had a diary or a journal, and then Pat, his brother, found it. And then there were like a bunch of boys, like a sleepover, hanging out, and they all found it and were making fun of him. And if I remember, I can quote a little bit of it. He's writing this shitty 13-year-old poetry about Amber, when I see you in the shower, it really gives me a boost of power.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, of course, it's going to be found and made fun of for years and years and years.
Yeah.
But yeah, our cousin April, we were living in Tacoma. She was in Yakima, but for whatever reason, Nick used to come with us sometimes when we take our weekend trips to Yakima.
Yeah.
And the first time he did that, we knew that we'd be hanging out with our cousin April, and we knew that Nick was going to fall stupidly in love with her and not know what to do. Because a lot of people fell in love with our cousins.
Yeah.
And still do.
Although he was closer in age to Amy, wasn't he?
Yeah, but that didn't matter. He thought April was cuter.
Yeah.
Because April was obviously cuter. People would tell me. I don't know.
Really?
Her sister Amy, our cousin, has a more exotic look to her. These are grandma's quotes now.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I would disagree. I think more people find Amy attractive.
Yeah, I definitely saw that more, especially as they grew into adults.
Yeah.
But so April's 16, Nick's probably, or no, April's probably 17 or 18.
Right.
Anyway, he comes to Yakima with us, and of course, the first time he meets April, he decides he's in love with her. But the thing about Nick is he'll obsess over a girl without ever talking to her.
Right. He'll sit in the corner and just kind of be totally inside his head.
And then when he is addressed in conversation, he'll give really short responses. He's not being funny at all. So the hilarious Nick Keough that he should be exposing to girls, he just shuts down, and like to the point where everybody notices and everybody is uncomfortable. Like he had problems.
Yeah. Doing nothing to get this girl to like him back.
No, not making his presence known at all, except for how weird he's being. So we come back from... You might remember parts of the story that I don't, but we come back from Yakima, and of course all he can talk about is April and how much he likes April. And what am I going to do about this thing? First of all, she lives 2.5 hours away. That's the first roadblock.
Yeah.
And you're a freak. But what was the thing he decided? He got her email address from us, and he was going to write her an email?
Right. He wrote her an email, and he sent a picture he had drawn, right? And she thought
he was a talented artist, and she was impressed by it, I think. But I watched the process. Like, he made me dig up a picture of her, like, out of a shoebox, and then asked to use it, and I asked why, of course.
Oh, he drew a picture of her? I forgot about that.
Yeah, he drew a picture of her.
I was thinking of that picture where it was like a lady in a carriage.
Oh, yeah. Well, he would show her all of the art that he'd already done, like in high school, some of which was pretty good. I haven't seen it in many years, and I don't know art. But, yeah, so he drew this really amazing picture of her, and it was just this picture I'd given him. Like, she was on the phone. She had her little bob haircut at the time or whatever it was. But I was like, dude,
I remember it not being that flattering a picture.
No. But the drawing was really good, but I told him, I recognized that it was good, but you still shouldn't send this to her. She barely knows who you are, and she probably thinks you're weird based on the time she did meet you. But he was insistent on sending it, and then he didn't ever give me the picture back, which is one thing. But she wrote him back, and she's like, wow, that's really amazing, Probably creeped out, though.
Yeah.
And so no, he took that as a thing, and then what was it? He just started sending her these big, lengthy paragraph after paragraph emails about growing up on the beach.
Yeah.
The sun and sandy beaches.
Yeah, he said that he lived in California at one point. He sure does miss the sun and sandy beaches. Smiley face. But I think it was just one email, and then from that it was just like checking his email constantly. I remember she didn't really write him back, and she wrote either you or me an email, and it said, because I think he put like his phone number in the email he wrote to her.
Sure he did.
And in the email that she wrote either to you or to me, maybe a week or two later, she said, tell your friend Nick I am going to write him an email back, and thanks for the picture. And then she never did, and then later just told us that she wasn't going to.
Yeah, and I think it was... This happened several times, but April was the first time also, like, after several weeks, and he's still pining for her. Like, his love for her never dies.
Yeah.
But, he's so frustrated not hearing back from her to the point where he's just being a dickhead to us all the time when we're hanging out.
Yeah.
And so obsessive over it. And then he actually got to a certain point where, I don't remember if I was sick of it or he was sick of me calling him out on it, but we weren't friends anymore. And, like,
Really?
he peeled out of the driveway and didn't talk to me for, like, 2 weeks. And then he came over and we did hang out. And then it was like, yeah, I'm basically over it now. And then that was it for the April thing. But It took him 2 weeks of not hanging out with us at all.
I think I remember seeing that like from the outside, but you would shut me out. You wouldn't tell me what was going on.
Well, you were hanging out with Pat. You guys had things to do. One Pat story, too, because we can't leave Pat out of the equation. He was most of the time hanging out with us just because he was Nick's brother and whatever. His parents basically forced Nick to hang out with Pat.
He was pretty hilarious, but also like just hard to be around.
Very hard to be. And it's so hard to describe. I can't even describe. He was never that smart, really.
He was just a little kid, though. I mean, you got to remember.
He wasn't a little kid. He was your age. I'm talking about well into our teenage
kids.
years.
Okay.
Just
Still kids.
A weird guy. And him and Nick would fight all the time, like to the point where it was really awkward for us. That time we were at Fred Meyer.
But they weren't like tough kids. They weren't scrappers at all. Like they would like aggressively like shove each other and pull like they'd grab each other by the necks and just pull. And not really fist fights or anything like that.
No,
just awkward, fat, hanging out of your clothes wrestling matches.
we were at Fred Meyer, and Nick had drove, so he was probably 17. And we were sitting in the Fred Meyer parking lot. You and I are in the back seat, and they're fighting over money. And I remember the money being like $2 that somebody owed the other one.
Something that, like, I know you took it off my dresser.
Yeah. And so, like, the fight quickly escalates to them punching each other, not in the face, but, like, as hard as they can each other's arm as fast as they can. And we're sitting there in the back like, what the fuck? We fought a lot in front of them, but never did we come to blows in front of them, at least once we hit teenagers, I don't think.
Yeah.
So it was just crazy. But sometimes they would team up and be, like, the weird best of friends when they would, we should tell the stuff about the grandpa.
Okay, yeah. I thought of something, too.
Oh, all right. Let's go with yours and then talk about the grandpa.
Do you remember they used to play the Meow game? What was their cat's name? Morris?
Morris?
I think it was Morris.
Oh, okay. I thought that's just how Pat pronounced it wrong.
One of them would distract it, and then the other one would come sneak up behind Morris and go, boo. And they would keep, if the cat meowed, they would get a point.
Nick was so gross with their pets, like, not just in a gay way, but remember also they had that weird little wiener dog?
Yeah.
And he would come home from work, and he would take off his shoes after walking around in them all day, and then take off his socks, and it's so gross because his feet stink anyway, and then he's, like, flossing his toes with his socks right there in the living room when we're hanging out, and then his dog would come up and lick the bottom of his feet as he was doing it, and he thought it was the cutest thing in the world. And I'm sitting there on the verge of vomiting. It was so disgusting. He was such a weird guy.
Yeah. Nick used to do this great impression of Pat.
We should address him as Nick Keogh.
Okay.
So it's not confusing.
One time, Nick was making fun of Pat because Pat had asked his mom.
Nick Keogh.
Yeah. Because Pat had asked their mom, Mom, there's a little bit of tape left in the video camera. Can I film the animals for a while? And Nick, like, immediately told us about it and would do it in Pat's voice.
And Nick had this great Wolverine impression that he used to do right when that first movie came out.
Yeah, he was that guy that really tried to dress like Wolverine.
And
like
did his hair like Wolverine.
Guy. Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty pathetic. But their grandpa lived with them for a little while, Martha's dad, and he didn't speak English, right?
Right.
He was a French crazy old man.
Right.
And he was very agitated all the time, and he'd yell at everybody in French, and nobody knew what was going on. But he was living with them, and he was an old man. I think he's died now, hasn't he?
I think so.
Yeah, I think I heard that. But he was old at the time, and Nick and Pat were just so mean to him all the time. Like, aggressively mean, and I couldn't wrap my head around it because, you know, whether he's crazy or not, he's your grandpa. But like, he'd be wandering downstairs, the grandpa, and they'd be upstairs, like, over, what do you call that? They have a little,
yeah, I don't know, upstairs.
An upper floor, a loft.
Right, okay.
So they could, and they would shoot over the edge with BB guns, right? Wasn't that it?
Like little plastic pellet guns.
But they still hurt like a bitch, and they're shooting them at their grandpa.
And he doesn't speak English, and Martha must speak, their mom must speak some French.
I hope so, because this guy's got some stories to tell. They should be disciplined.
Remember there was one time Nick went to France with his mom to visit his grandpa, and there was this great home video of his grandpa playing the piano, and it's this great house and this old piano, and everyone's just listening, and Nick keeps shutting off the light while he's playing, and you'd hear his mom yelling at him, Nick.
They had some hilarious home videos. There was that other one that they showed us when they were real little kids, him and Pat. And what was it? Like, they had just moved into an apartment, and their dad's trying to get some candid moment. Hey, kids, what do you think of the new place? And aren't they, like, throwing something at him?
Yeah.
What was it?
They're throwing stuff at him. He kept shaking the camera and saying, "It's an earthquake, guys." It's, you know, that thing you do when you first get a video camera.
And even as an 8-year-old or whatever Nick was, he's like, "Fuck you, Dad," basically in his eyes.
I remember, like, Pat coming up to the camera and just, like, drooling all over himself, like, as a joke. And Doug getting on him about that, their dad.
So we're not the only ones that have home videos that basically consist of our dad yelling at us.
Yeah. But their dad wasn't very scary, at least not to us.
I think it was like a red rubber ball, and they threw it at him, and then you hear their dad say, "You're busted!" Like he busted. He was super pissed off. Oh man, that's so funny. Their relationship with their parents, especially when they were teenagers, was fucking tense and awful. Because we would spend nights there, and our house was awful too, but in a different way. Like, our parents were just crazy in a whole other kind of way, but we mainly hung out upstairs. Like, we basically owned the top floor of that house.
Right.
And so we would just eat our food upstairs. It's not like we were ever expected to sit down with our family and have dinner.
Our parents never went upstairs.
No.
In the years we lived there.
And both of our rooms were located there. Yeah, definitely under 10 times in the 10 plus years we lived there.
Yeah.
And it was crazy that they never bothered. We could have been smoking pot that whole time.
We could have been doing so much stuff.
God. I wish I had smoked pot then.
Yeah.
Imagine what it... Never mind.
Yeah,
That's a whole
if we had
other
a
thing.
chance to go back, we might have had a pretty awesome day.
Yeah. But everybody has that thought. But yeah, then you'd go to Nick and Pat's house for dinner, and it was just crazy tense. Like, and Nick and Pat would start it most of the time.
But very nice, It was always a very clean house. They'd always have dinner at the same time.
Their
It was
parents
like
both
the
have
polar
great
opposite
jobs,
of our house. But, yeah, very tense. It was a weird family.
Like, just, it would take less than 2 minutes. We've barely started eating. And somebody would say something, and then somebody else would snap, and then it was just this huge mess right away. And then it subsides until the next thing is said.
I really didn't go to very many dinners.
Oh, it was awful. And Nick and Pat would intentionally push their buttons. And then that just made it worse. And I wonder why they do that. It was the most uncomfortable situation all the time.
Play Brotherhood!
Is a bluebird blue? It's all good.
Remember the time Doug busted you at the Tacoma Mall?
Oh, yeah, I had bought an R-rated movie. I bought a VHS copy of Bottle Rocket.
Right.
And
which I've told you before is like, and we could try to explain to him, but to no avail. Bottle Rocket is like the least rated R-rated movie ever.
It really
it's so
should be
innocent.
rated R. And it costs like $24.
Of course it did.
And he just, "What'd you buy?" And I show it to him, and just he takes it, doesn't even look at the title, just immediately turns it over and looks for the rating, and it's rated R. And then he's like, "Don't you think you should return that?" And I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, fuck him.
Yeah, I could have, and then gone back later and bought it, but I was like, you know what? No.
I think I was even proud of you at that
shouldn't
time
be rated R.
for not taking it back.
Yeah.
That, and I wanted to watch it.
Although it made them like really, really hate us. The parents never really liked us. I think that they didn't like our parents, and they didn't want their kids like.
They
around
pretended to
them at
like
all.
our parents for some years.
Right. I remember at one point, like years before Mom and Dad actually got divorced, but like when it was started getting really, really bad in the house, and they were just
In our house?
Yeah. And they were just always talking about divorce. And we told Nick and Pat, like, I think our parents are actually like might get a divorce. And they didn't for a couple years later. But remember, Nick and Pat told us, if your parents get divorced, then our parents aren't going to let us hang out with each other anymore.
I don't remember that at all.
Really? Oh, I think we were bowling or something like that. Because they just thought that we were terrible influences.
Which isn't true. I mean, we hung out with them for so many years and never really got into any legitimate trouble with them.
No, yeah, we were just...
Because we were all so, we all just wanted to hang out at the same 2 or 3 places, and I'm still that way.
They had, like, goals for their kids and stuff like that we weren't going to help them achieve.
And what was the bribe with the... Oh, this is how, like, as much as Nick and Pat hated their parents, and their parents seemed to hate them sometimes, like, their parents treated them like royalty. It was crazy, like, just lavishing them with the gifts, because they have good jobs and stuff. And Nick and Pat ended up getting good jobs through their parents, which is handy. But, yeah, always a nice place. And I remember Nick was 18 or 19, and he had told them that he was going to move out.
Yeah.
And to bribe him into staying at the house and not leaving, they bought them an air hockey table.
No, they bought them that pool table.
Oh, yeah.
The air hockey
like
table.
a full-size, good, nice pool table.
Right. But
That's when I really loved going over to their house.
They used the air hockey table as a bribe, and it was, I don't know if you remember this or not, but the air hockey table was, they were going to, like... They were at our house, and they were calling their parents, and they're saying, we're going to stay for a while, we might spend the night or whatever. And their parents were like, no, you need to come home. we want to talk to you about something or whatever, and they go home and they had bought them the air hockey table so that they would come home and like not hang out with us. So basically what they were saying on the phone was, if you come home, we're going to offer you an air hockey table.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's not like we were doing drugs. You may have been smoking cigarettes there towards the end. Who knows?
No.
But, no, of course not.
Occasionally, maybe.
Yeah. I'm just saying, like, they could have been hanging out with people a lot worse off than us. I realize our parents were fucked up, and I think that was a lot of it. Like, It is saying something to let your kids go hang out at a house that you know is probably psychotic. But we weren't psychotic. And we were not hanging out with our parents.
But you have to think, though, like, on those camping trips, think about, like, if you saw little kids like us running around with your kids, with our parents, like, they probably watched and studied us for a while and came to some conclusions.
I'd like to think that's not the case, but I'm sure you're right.
Yeah, I mean, whether they were valid or not, who knows what they were, but I'm sure that they had many a discussion about why their kids shouldn't hang out with us.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. Nick and I would have issues sometimes, like big dramatic girlfriend-like fights.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember of any examples, but sometimes he would just snap, like, because I would poke and prod. Like, sometimes we got to that point in our friendship where it's like we're just going to one-up each other and pissing each other off sometimes.
Yeah.
And I remember we were visiting Seattle, living in Tacoma, so it was like a half-hour drive. And when he had his car, we would do that more often.
Yeah.
And he always had these big ideas about these $140 shoes that he saw in the window at Hot Topic that he wanted to buy or something with flames on the side.
Yeah.
He had crazy tastes in clothing as a teenager. Most of his wardrobe was legitimately from Hot Topic.
Yeah.
And they were the shiny, like, silk shirts with the ruffles.
What store was that? Was that, like, some zebra store?
Oh, the Seattle thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it was pants that he was going to buy at the zebra store.
Yeah.
On Broadway, which is a very gay area.
Yeah. And we made a trip of it. It was me, you, him, and our friend Chris.
Yeah. Former friend, depending on when this comes out.
My friend Chris. And we had seen Being John Malkovich.
Oh, yeah.
That was what we were doing. We were going to see
at
Being
the Neptune
John
Theater
Malkovich.
in Seattle, Washington.
We saw that, and then we were going to go get these pants.
And I think I was giving him shit, maybe, I'm trying to remember now, because we had to walk so far so that he could buy these pants that I didn't care about.
Yeah.
And so I keep getting in his face about it, but I'm sure, like, in a what I thought was joking way.
Yeah, we all thought you were joking.
Yeah, and so we're walking, and then
this was discussed heavily after it happened.
And then he just kind of snapped. Like, I made one too many comments, and he snapped, and he pushed me really hard into a bush on the side of the sidewalk. And then getting back up, that's the most awkward situation because there's three other people standing there, and he just fucking snapped at me to the point where I was on the ground. And so, like, I think I made some jackass comment and slinked off to the other side of the crowd. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, we just kept on walking.
But you said it's been discussed since?
Yeah, well, his thing was that, like, we had seen Being John Malkovich, which you and I were really excited about. I don't even remember how he felt about it.
But it was something that we wanted to do.
Right, yeah.
You and I. Okay.
And then, so his thing was, when we were walking to the store, you kept making jokes and just talking about, like, how long it's taking to get there. Fucking ridiculous to spend this money on pants.
So those aren't even jokes. I'm just making slams against him.
No, but you're saying it. You're telling jokes, you know.
I'm always telling a joke, buddy.
That's right. And then, he turns around and he snaps at you, all right, and he pushes you down, and then he walks up to, like, where me and Chris are, and he's like, as soon as he gets what he wants, he just doesn't fucking care about anyone else anymore. We did what he wanted, so now he just wants to go home.
Oh, I feel bad now,
that was
10
his
years
thing.
later.
But me and Chris discussed it a lot, and I don't know, you were both out of line.
I guess so. God, I didn't know this episode was going to bring me down so hard.
You didn't know that that's why he was mad?
Sure, I guess it makes total sense. I just haven't thought about it at all in so long.
Yeah.
But then he used to get mad at me. Apparently, I made some comment about him after I'd moved away to Yakima, so we'd seen each other way less. And I made friends with people pretty quick when I moved to Yakima. And then I would invite him over and then just apparently neglect him and he'd come over to Yakima for a week and meet all my new buddies, and I was sharing a house with them, which was pretty sweet for a 19-year-old or whatever I was.
Yeah.
And so he'd come over, and then I would hear afterward that I would make like jackass comments in front of my friends to him, and I hate knowing that I was that guy. But when I heard it fed back to me, I do remember saying things like that and just not thinking about it.
Yeah, but see, like, we're used to when we were hanging out with just him, that's all we did to each other.
What, talk shit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was more of a thing, like, I guess just once we started getting outside friends, it didn't always mesh anymore because they had different personalities, and maybe Nick was adapting. Oh, no, he wasn't adapting to anybody's personality. He just shell up. But I don't know.
Didn't you tell me the story? I'm trying to think of one specific thing when I was living with those guys. Because I hadn't seen him in a long time. He comes over. Apparently, I'd slipped up and said something about, because Randy was one of our roommates who's been mentioned on the show before. Not Randy from the bonus episode, by the way.
Right.
Randy, this guy we knew. And I guess he was a traditionally handsome man. Is that right?
Yeah.
He's a little beefy in the gut. But
He looked like a chipmunk.
But he was so huge. Like, he was just huge in general, not fat. He was just a big guy.
Yeah.
And and he would get play or I don't know if that's true.
Jehovah's Witness version
Yeah.
of play. Is that what we're calling it?
Yeah. And then so I make some comment about that and indicate to Nick, or apparently I flat out said something about, although I can't imagine I would say something as stupid as this. It's weird having good-looking friends now. Would I have said that? That doesn't sound like me, unless it was an obvious, over-the-top joke.
Saying, like, it's weird. Yeah, I think I do remember that.
You remember
like,
me saying it? Or hearing
no,
you say it?
I remember, like, his that you said something like that. I think he told me that you're like, oh, it's weird to have, like, good-looking friends. I remember that his interpretation of it was that, like, I don't know, it was, I don't know, something about, like, it was weird for you to have good-looking friends. I think you meant it more like confident friends, like someone that
true.
like talked to girls with you and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden, like you were talking to girls in your social life now and taking lunchbox pictures with them.
Yeah, that shows them how cool I am. But yeah, that's where it started to break bad between me and Nick, I think, as friends. The first time I moved to Yakima.
Yeah, and he was still living with his parents and
yeah. But even after that, like once he'd gotten a place of his own, well, a place with his brother, which was funny to me because our whole growing up as friends, he would talk about how he couldn't wait to get away from his fucking
not only
brother.
that, they were sharing a studio with like barely one bedroom.
Yeah, and I saw that place once. I remember. I don't know what it was.
We hadn't seen them in a while at that point.
No. And I was dating Storytelling, and I'd brought her over for a concert, I think at the Gorge in George, Washington.
Yeah.
And I just remember him not being impressed with me at all that day. And I wasn't sure if I had a girlfriend or because it was her.
Yeah.
But he just seemed turned off by the whole idea. And then I remember something to do
You went to the show with him?
Yeah.
Oh.
So we were friends enough that he would do that, but I think that was whatever happened that day in his own head is what stopped us being friends. Because I've only seen him once or twice after that, and it was really, really awkward. But all I can think is that they were living in that weird studio together, and so they had just like bare mattresses laying on the floor next to each other, and then they had a couch in the living room.
Yeah.
And I'd already made arrangements, and I think Nick may have even offered that Stacy and I could spend the night that night because we were living in Yakima, but we needed a place to crash while we were in Tacoma, and so we slept there, and we didn't have sex or anything. But the only thing I can think is that he was pissed that I brought a girl, because at this point he'd never even kissed a girl, because that was another thing with Nick. That didn't happen until way, way later, because he would freak out and have his episodes. Did you want to say something? You look like you want to say something.
No.
Okay, because I thought about going right into the Lisa stuff then.
Yeah.
This is
Keep
basically
going on the girls.
yeah, well, just to give a better idea, I guess, because Lisa, who is a listener now, so hi, Lisa. What happened, I guess the backstory is we had just gotten the internet at the house. Mom and Dad were still together, although just barely.
Right.
And so I was in the chat rooms, found a Jehovah's Witness in California that was going to come out and meet me.
Swirly tea.
Swirly tea. And so the first time Swirly T comes out to meet me, she brings her friend Lisa. Sorry, we don't have a moniker for her.
Grommet 1.
Grommet 1. There you go. And Lisa was really cute, and like she'd just come. I think it was a last-minute addition to the party.
Yeah.
And Nick Keogh fell instantly
By
in love
this
with
time,
her.
we had met my friend Chris, who was her cousin, so it was like a big
that's right.
group hanging together.
Yeah. And so we would, and they were there for like a week, I think, the first time I met her. And so it was weird, but it was fun because you got along with her cousin, so at least you had something to do.
Right.
And
you were sitting on chairs making out with Swirly T in front of everybody.
Yeah, I'm sorry again. We've already got over this.
I like how you asked Tracy about, like, is it gross that Dad used to do that? And you did the same thing.
That was the first time I'd ever made out with a girl. I just wasn't thinking straight.
Yeah.
And you told a story on the Alvina episode that I hope already posted where you did the same thing. It's just like tacky because you're not thinking about it because it's your first time.
We were in the other room.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We also weren't like 15 years old, though.
I wasn't 15 either. I was 18. That was the first time I kissed a girl. I didn't care that anybody was there. I somehow thought that it was fine. So you have Chris to hang out with. I'm making out with Swirly T the whole
Plus,
time.
I was putting in some time with Lisa myself.
And Lisa was, I don't know if she admits it now, but she was in love with you.
Yeah.
And you can even acknowledge that.
I agree, yeah. I was hilarious.
Yeah, you really were. And in the dickhead way that
Yeah.
girls should respond to and don't enough. But yeah, Lisa liked you, but Nick really liked her.
And Chris, too, I think.
Oh, yeah.
It was like she kind of liked me, Nick, and Chris.
She liked Nick, too? Nick Keogh?
I think a little bit, yeah.
All right.
At least at first.
And he, to Nick's credit, like this was the first time where he did open up and be himself a little bit around her.
Yeah.
But so they're visiting for a week, and gets towards the end of that week, and of course Nick is head over heels in love with her and needs to do something about it. He needs to make his case known before she leaves. And so we all know what's happening. I forget, did we give Lisa a warning before it happened?
I don't know. I just remember asking.
It seems like we gave her a heads up.
I remember, like, I liked her a lot, and so, like, I had a lot of stake in asking Nick, like, don't do this. Don't do this. You know what I mean? Like, I don't remember warning her, but I remember begging him not to do it. Like, we all were, though, because it was going to go bad.
Yeah, and
he was going to say, like, I love you and stuff.
Yeah.
Or something very close to that.
I think you're exactly right with the I love you. And, you know, I had...
Rather than just letting her leave and emailing her, like, starting a conversation, you know? Starting a relationship.
I had no investment in this at all, except for that I didn't want to see him, you know, get made an ass of, which we all knew was going to happen.
Yeah.
Because of how aggressive he was being about it. And so, of course, he goes out there. I remember she's leaving just for the day, not ultimately, maybe, but she's leaving before us at our house. And so she's outside, and Nick runs outside to talk to her before she takes off.
Yeah.
And so we are all running to the window that best suits the situation.
Yeah, Mom and Dad's room.
Yeah. So we're all piled into Mom and Dad's room, like just watching, not being able to hear anything. And I'm almost 100% Lisa knew it was going to happen. We'd already warned her. And then, it was just, of course, he comes back. Or was it her that came? Oh, Nick was leaving.
Oh.
So we didn't know what happened, and we got Lisa's side of it, of course, when she came back into the house. And, of course, it went badly. Why would you do that?
Yeah. How did it, I don't remember, like, the details of how it went. Did he say, I love you?
We'd have to ask her. I'm sure she'll send us an email, please, or a comment or something just to let us know. But I'm pretty sure it got that far. And that was the sad thing about Nick, because Lisa was cool, and like obviously everybody else there dug her, but that it doesn't give him the right to do that in the week that he's met her. And how did I expect it to work? I should say, her living in California too, with Swirly T. But I was at least making out.
I don't know. I think if Nick had a Jehovah's Witness girlfriend in California, that his parents would have been happy to fly over there with him and let them be a boyfriend-girlfriend long distance.
His parents never would have let him move out of the state.
No, I'm talking about just to have a girlfriend. I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking we were a lot younger than we were back then. I was only like 15, right?
When the Lisa thing happened,
I mean, maybe 16.
I was
16.
18, so you were 16.
Okay.
But yeah, and then
So yeah, he was over 18 then.
yeah. Emily, remember Emily?
Yeah. Was a 15-year-old girl.
And how old was Nick?
19, 20.
Yeah. And I don't even remember how he came into contact with her. I think that was through his friend Simon. Oh, you want to tell the Simon/Swirly Tea story?
Yeah, sure. I was wondering if you wanted to.
Oh, of course. It's so good. So I was in love with this girl that I had met in a chat room. And we, in the year that we were dating, meaning whatever, we'd only actually made an effort to see each other because we lived so far away. 3 times total ever I met her. And it was between the second and the third.
3 times ever?
Yeah.
Weren't you like engaged to her, internet engaged?
I don't believe it was ever the case.
I remember like
I wanted to marry her.
Uncle Russ coming over and talking to you about, are you ready to get married?
Oh, jeez. No, but I remember the swirly tea thing was happening right at the same time Mom and Dad were getting divorced. And when I told Dad that I was moving to Yakima, like when I was going to break it to him, in his emotionally devastated state because he needed us there, I was like, I'm getting out of here. But he assumed before I even got to what I was saying that I was moving to California to marry Swirly Tea.
Really?
Yeah. And I said, no, that's not the case at all. But yeah, between the second and the third time we'd ever hung out, which spans probably a year. I don't know, something sad like that. But I remember we would talk constantly on the internet to each other and on the phone and everything else, just checking in. I love you. Mwah, mwah, mwah.
I remember when we first met them. Wasn't it at an assembly?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. That was
All
weird.
These memories are coming back. Sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No. And I remember she was going on vacation, not to see me, but somewhere else. And for some reason, and thinking back on it now and all the details of the story,
I'm sorry. This is the third time you met her you're talking about?
No.
Okay.
I'm saying we'd already met twice, but now we're apart again when this happens. She lives in California. I live in Washington. She's leaving California, but not to come to Washington, somewhere else.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, and like I say, as the story unfolded and I thought about it as an adult, it's obvious that she meant for this to happen, and I was just too stupid and naive to see it. But she asked if I'll keep an eye on her email while she's away, and she gives me her password. And so I'm going to cry.
Oh, yeah. I remember this.
This is 18-year-old emotions getting dredged back up. So I go in with her password that she gave me. I'm not being that dickhead that busts into her email, which has happened to me a couple of times since. So I'm looking in her email, and she has a folder in her email, a separate folder titled Simon Medish, which was the name of Nick Keogh's best friend and a guy that I never really liked at this point in my life. And he wasn't a Jehovah's Witness. He was just this guy that Nick knew and sometimes hung out that he knew from high school. But I knew that, everybody's hanging out in the same AOL chat rooms, I guess, at 18 years old.
Yeah.
And Simon had a very heavy internet presence at the time. And so
what was his screen name? I can't remember.
Oh, God, I wish I knew. I'd call him out. And he's a MySpace friend, and I don't give a shit. I like Simon now. He sold me a car later in life.
Yeah.
But at the time, it was just horrible because I open it up, and I know that she knows of Simon through the internet.
Yeah.
And we've slotted it up on the internet at this point together, which is another story that you can tell if you want to, but hold on.
Yeah.
So we were having explicit, and I'd never had sex. I didn't even understand. She taught me the word clit. I never knew that before.
Okay.
But yeah, so we would just have these aggressively porno conversations online all the time. And then so she's gone. I find this folder with this guy's name that I know. He lives in Tacoma. Yeah. And so, of course, I open it up, and she had saved, copied, and pasted it into emails to herself, all of these explicitly sexual conversations she was having with that guy.
That's hilarious.
I know.
But I could see him doing that. Had he ever met her in person?
He may have. That's what I'm trying to... I know he eventually did. And in fact... I'm sorry.
I know he's the type of guy that would get online and try to have cyber sex with people. So I'm sure he approached her and probably talked a little about, isn't Nick such a dork? Yeah, he's a real nerd.
When you talk trash about Nick, it really makes me wet.
Was there anything about oh, fuck your boyfriend?
I looked at it long enough to figure out what was happening, and then that was it. And I remember not confronting her about it when she came back and she called me on the phone because I had convinced myself I was so desperate for a girl to make out with 3 times a year that I was not going to bring it up.
Yeah.
I was not going to mention it. And then later on, like a couple weeks later, it's just building and building in me. And she's still talking to me like nothing's happening. And so eventually I think she said something to me and I just snapped and told her that I knew. And then it was this huge conversation, like she was bawling on the phone, probably pretend bawling, I don't know. And then I remember her mom came in the room because she was crying so loud. And her mom gets on the phone.
What?
Is this Nick? What have you said to my daughter?
Oh my God.
Yeah. And then... So I forgive her. She says, we can make this work. We can make this work. And I forgave her. And then so we kept up our charade for another couple months probably. And then I'm going to let you take over the thing that ended our relationship because it ties into...
Okay, I don't really remember.
The Chris thing? Chris finding that stuff?
Yeah, that ended your relationship?
Yeah.
Oh.
You tell that part and then I'll tell how it
okay.
ended.
Well, Chris, he
Chris
had
is
found...
Swirly T's cousin.
Right,
Blah,
yeah.
blah, blah.
Our friend.
Just reminding the audience.
Yeah, he found... well, there would always be stories with Chris about, like, Swirly T and him. Like, I don't know if they were, like, hooking up. I don't know if they ever kissed or anything.
And they're legit cousins.
Yeah.
Or
but
second cousins, was it?
I don't even know.
It doesn't matter. That's gross.
But at least according to him, this girl was, like, really into him to where, like... both his parents and her parents like were worried about it to a certain degree.
She told me about that too.
Yeah,
and I did sense, at least on her end, some kind of attraction to him.
Oh yeah, and I think
weird.
Coming from him too. But all the ladies did love him. He had huge muscles. Oh my god. But anyway, yeah. So he found.
He was on our computer. He had to have been, right? No, you forwarded this information to him.
No, I don't remember how it happened. I think maybe he couldn't have gotten it off of her computer. He must have been on our computer and found, because I don't remember ever finding or reading any of your logs of your porno conversations.
Not only would I have these conversations with her, but I would save them to jerk off to them later.
Yeah.
And it was a family mutual computer.
Somehow he got it, and he had a copy of it, and him and his girlfriend, I wasn't even there, they were like reenacting it like as a play or something like that in front of a group full of
Fuck
people.
Chris, I hate that guy.
People who knew you and who knew Tara.
Swirly T.
Yeah, Swirly T, sorry. And then he had all the transcripts of it shoved under his bed or under his mattress or something
What
like
the
that.
fuck?
And his mom found it and was convinced that it was a conversation between him and his own cousin. And then I remember that led to some problems.
Yeah, I remember exactly what happened. Okay, so like there were, I'm sure, pages and pages of just like this 18-year-old's idea of sex like spilled out onto paper.
He told me some of it, but I never read any of it.
Yeah, that's so embarrassing. God.
So without getting into any gross ones, I do remember one detail that was like describing in detail how you were ripping off your belt and pushing her onto a couch.
Man, I've never done that even in real life now.
Wow.
But yeah, I remember what happened. I was working at Suncoast Motion Picture Company at the Tacoma Mall, and I get a call from Dad at work, and Mom had just left him at this point, and he says, I got a call from Rita. And then I got to put it in my head for a second, who is Rita? And then I figure out that's Swirly T's mom's name, and she has no reason to be talking to Dad ever. So Chris printing out this stuff and his mom finding it resulted in her calling what I guess was her sister, Swirly T's mom. They were somehow related.
I think they were related through Chris's dad.
Okay. In any case, all of a sudden Swirly T's mom knows about all this fake internet sex that we're having. And she tells Dad about it. Oh, Dad had busted me previously for this too.
Really?
But privately.
How awkward.
Because he found it on the family computer. And I remember his exact expression. He took me upstairs. This is after Mom left and he felt he needed to have more heart-to-hearts with us. He says, you know, I hate to put you on the spot, son, but I was looking through our internet history and I found something. And I've seen the types of conversations you're having with your girlfriend, and they would make a porn star blush, Nicholas. That's what he told me. And of course, that's humiliating.
That's just stuff that like Grandma used to say to him when he had his humongous porn collection.
Yeah. But so anyway, Swirly T's dad calls our dad and tells him everything. And so Dad calls me, and Dad, in his defense, was totally cool about it to me. He'd already known about it. He's been through it, I'm sure. Not with the internet, but, well, eventually through the internet. And so he's like, so she's pretty pissed. I don't know where this is going to lead, basically. And then, so we're forbidden to talk to each other on the phone now or on the internet. She's been restricted from both. But I half-assed know another cousin of hers named Sebastian that lives in California near her on the internet.
I remember that guy, yeah.
And so, like, I sent him a letter to then pass on to Swirly T the next time that he saw her. And it was basically about how I wanted to run away and come live with her and all this nonsense.
You give it to him knowing he's going to see it?
Of course. I doubt I even sealed the envelope. I wanted everybody to see my love for her.
Oh, it was like an actual letter?
Yeah, because she didn't have internet access. That was the only way I could get to her. And so he passes it on to her. Like 3 weeks pass, and I get a letter in the mail at the house. And so I run to the bathroom, and not to shit, like I just want some privacy.
Got it.
And then, so I read it, and within 2 sentences, she's blowing me off hardcore. Like, she's done with this now.
Yeah.
As she should be. This is fucking retarded. And so, yeah, that was it. And I pushed a couple more times, but I've never seen her talk to her again. Oh, I guess I have. She was offended when she found out I wasn't a Jehovah's Witness anymore and made a point to contact me and tell me that.
Oh, really? How long ago was that?
Right when I got MySpace, probably 3 years ago.
So I missed it. What was the third time you met her?
The third time we met her was really awkward because that was after I'd found out about the her and Simon thing and forgiven her for it. But Simon was hanging out with us that night.
I remember that. Why did you allow that to happen?
Because he was Nick's best friend and Nick was my best friend, and I was like, okay.
But why would he even go? Didn't we go to like Chris's parents' house? And
he wanted to go so he could picture her naked in front of me.
Yeah, but even he knew at that point that you knew about it, right?
Oh yeah. And that was I think it was the first time I'd even, like, I made a point not to hang out with Simon for a while after that.
Yeah.
And that was the first time when the object of both our affection is sitting there in the room. Not his affection. To his credit, he probably just wanted to jerk off, too. But whatever. That was really weird. I hope Simon does listen because I'm sure he thought it was preposterous at the time.
Yeah.
He had an adult's mind at a kid's age.
You're busted.
Did we cover Emily? Nick,
oh, no.
Nick met her. She was really young. He was super obsessed with her.
I'm sorry we strayed away from that. That's so irritating.
I think there was something like he was mean to her, like he was kind of being jerky to her once.
Which does work,
again,
sadly.
Chris was there. We were all at Nick's parents' house when his parents weren't there.
Yeah, and you're going to have to take over for the most part here because I met her maybe once, but I wasn't even living here then. You guys just relayed this story back to me.
Yeah. Well, it was real brief, whatever it was, and he and I think he blew her off because of the religion once. He said something, but then like later that day changed his mind, and somehow
he knows it's wrong because she's 15.
Yeah.
But he's also never even kissed a girl at this point.
So there comes a point where one time he's at a mall and another Jehovah's Witness person his age, who we didn't really know but went to his congregation, saw them, and it got back to Nick's parents. And they forbade it from happening. Because
she's not a Jehovah's Witness.
Right. And
firstly, and secondly, because she's fucking 15.
I don't think they had a problem with that. But I remember that his dad had said, like, you're dragging our name through the dirt and stuff like that. Because he was dating a worldly girl.
Going back to the mall, wasn't there a story about she had mentioned, like, she'd seen some jacket when they were hanging out at the mall together that was like $150, and she had just mentioned it in passing, liking it when they were there, and then so he buys it for her, and she doesn't want to accept it because she thinks it's weird that he would spend that much money on her when they're not even dating or anything. But then I remember she was pushing for them to start dating. And wasn't there a story about their first so-called kiss? Didn't you tell me about that?
Yeah, I think we were all downstairs playing like video games or something that time when Chris was there.
I thought you were sitting in the back of the car and it happened on a porch. Is that a different story?
Maybe. I can't remember how it happened. All I remember is that Chris like rounding us up and being like, yo, he needs to be alone, yo. Like he was like Chris would like get me in a corner and be like, seriously, dude, I'm going to tell you something right now. don't fuck this up for Keo. It's going to work for him today. Seriously, we're going to get out of here when I say.
And you just want him to kiss a girl.
Yeah, that's like, yeah. But Chris is like all being special ops about it and stuff like that. And I'm like, yeah, whatever you say. And then I can't remember how. We saw it. Maybe we went upstairs and we like kind of saw it happen downstairs. Maybe we went outside and looked in through a window. I can't remember exactly.
But he did kiss her? That was his first kiss?
Or maybe he just told us that.
I think the story... Okay. I'm getting it mixed up. You told me a story even prior to that where you and Chris were in the back of the car and they had just started dating or potentially dating, and you had dropped her off at her place, or Nick had, and you guys were waiting in the back seat, and she was obviously wanting at least a peck of a kiss from Nick, and he goes in for a hug instead, and then you guys made fun of him for a long time.
Yeah.
That's the story I was remembering.
More familiar, yeah.
But, of course, that didn't work. And then every time he heard about her kissing or banging some other black guy, he would get super pissed and vent to me.
And then there was a girl that was getting a divorce named Gina Davis.
See, I was there for none of that. And her name is not a joke, Gina Davis?
Her name is Gina Davis, spelled with a Gina, though.
Forgive me for making a bunch of Gina Davis jokes as you tell this story. What was that all about? Because I was not there for that.
He met her on the Olympic archery team. As she was running for... You didn't know that Gina Davis is an Olympic archer?
I couldn't tell if that was a Gina Davis joke or just something I didn't know about this other Gina Davis.
Well, we can't make Gina Davis jokes if you know nothing about her, dude.
I know Cutthroat Island.
But, yeah...
Did he ever kiss Gina? And if so, was it a long kiss goodnight? See there, I'm done.
This is what happened. I remember he liked her a lot for some reason. And then I would hear stories. I wasn't really hanging out with him at all. You lived in Yakima, and anytime we hung out is like when me and Chris made an effort to like go hang out with him. And so he liked this girl. She was getting a divorce. She was Jehovah's Witness. She thought he was funny. And we'd always hear stories like about one time they were at...
And she was attractive, right? I never met her.
Yeah,
but.
she was good looking. She was... they were playing Frisbee at his house, and she was like, oh, that's a really cool like Spitfire hoodie you're wearing.
Of course he was.
Can I wear it? It's kind of cold out here. And Nick would not let her wear it. He was like, no, it's mine. And like he's like, I thought it was just being really playful, but she did tell one of my friends that kind of made her mad.
I can see that it's a dick move, but I would also think it was funny.
Yeah.
Kind of.
So then one day, me and Chris...
Maybe if he eventually gave her the hoodie.
Yeah. I don't think he did, though. Me and Chris one day are hanging out with Pat Keogh, and we find out that Nick and this big group of people, including this girl, are going to eat Mexican food. And Nick did not want us to come. I think he thought that like she was going to have a crush on Chris or something like that, or that I was going to try to cock block him or something like that, because I kind of did that before. I can't even remember how, or I'd always threaten to do that. Anyway, so we go, and there's not a lot of places to sit, and the tables are configured kind of weird. And there's like one more seat at the main table, and then a little side table. And she's like, and this girl Gina Davis is like, "Oh my God, Pat, I have to talk to you." And it was something about like getting approval for your brother or something like that. Like, I don't know. It was obviously a good thing for Nick. Like, oh, I'm going to talk to Pat. I got to get close to the brother. So me, Chris, and Nick sit at the little side table. And Nick is like, what, does she want to fuck Pat now? And he's just going insane in his head. And he puts his head down on the table and just never picks it up for the whole time we're there.
How many people are there?
A lot. Other than me, Chris, and Pat, maybe 5 other people.
And how old is he?
Like Jessica and Josh Estep are there.
Oh, man.
He's over 20, I think, at least 20.
And just making a girly scene.
Everyone is just going, what is wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? And like he just won't even lift his head. The waitress is like, can I get you anything? And he wouldn't lift his head.
Wow.
Like, it was bizarre. And I felt awful because he never wanted us coming. We came.
Oh, yeah, you guys just kind of crashed
really
the party.
my fault. That he did that.
At least it wasn't something you did that made him go that way.
But but I just remember her being like, what is wrong with him? You know, like whispering to everybody like that, and then it was over. Maybe that's why he doesn't talk to me now. Maybe I did ruin it for him.
Oh.
I don't really fucking care. He's married now.
Yeah. He just didn't understand how that was coming across. Like the girl of his dreams.
I think he just starts. He kind of thinks of it as like, kind of like. Do you remember in an episode of Never Not Funny when
Jimmy Pardo's Never Not Funny,
Yeah.
podcast.com.
Matt Belknap was telling some story about like liking a girl on the beach, like at this big senior trip or something like that, and his way to get her attention was to just walk really pensively along the water, like staring up and like just being totally antisocial. Like that's kind of like how I see Nick's doing it. Like this is at least going to make her think about me the entire dinner.
Yeah. That's not always a good thing.
Yeah.
I am so glad I was not there for that. I cringed just hearing that story. That's crazy. But Nick, he didn't he try medication for a lot of his social anxiety, and it just freaked him out more? I think he told me that. But I remember he was going to go to, straight out of high school, he was going to go to the Art Institute in Seattle, which is a big deal and pretty expensive. His parents forked over, what was it, $30,000 or something?
Yeah, it was a lot of money.
So that he could go to the Art Institute, because as we mentioned, he was something of an artist. And then so he goes there, and it's not that he's not super excited about it. I remember I went with him when he was buying a lot of his equipment, and it was all he could talk about.
Yeah.
And then I hear, I talked to him maybe every weekend at this point, but I hadn't followed up on him to see how his first week of school went until I saw him that first time. And he had already dropped out. 2 days in, he's done with the Art Institute. And his parents tried to get the money back and only got $10,000, I think, out of the 30. Yeah. His panic attacks were worth $20,000.
Yeah, he just couldn't handle being there.
Yeah, he told me a story about it was his second day of class. There were so many cute girls in the class, and all he can think about is how they're staring at him, how they're looking at him and analyzing him. And so he just couldn't handle it and got up and made a scene in the middle of the class and just never came back.
Remember one time we convinced him, we said that if you have hairy knuckles, that means you're gay. And he's like, shut up, dude. Girls do not fucking think that, do they? And he was like going to pluck all of his knuckle hairs out.
The dude's hairy.
Yeah.
I have a...
Yeah, I'd say that before we started recording this and we're just talking about we're going to record a Nick Q episode, I was like, oh, he'd probably find it endearing, but I don't think so anymore.
Are we being too harsh?
I don't know. We're diagnosing him.
Because I was kind of thinking, depending on how it went, we could tell him about the show. Like, hey, you should listen to this.
I don't know. I'm sure without getting his prior consent, I'm sure he won't be happy with everything we've said.
Well, that's unfortunate. I will...
but he can come tell his side. Tell him what pissed him off that day to make him push you into a bush.
Nick Keogh is now married and has a kid. I know this because of MySpace.
I think she got pregnant before they got married, which I also know because of MySpace. And but that wasn't what the parents think of that. I wonder if he's a Jehovah's Witness anymore.
He's not. I know he's not.
Oh, really?
I've talked to him since. Him or his whole family aren't anymore, which is crazy.
Really? At all?
Yeah, I remember when his parents dropped out because they were mad at an elder within their congregation, which is the same reason our mom dropped out.
Yeah, but I still
believe everything, but this guy really makes me
mad. I know
mad.
that they skipped going to memorial one year, which is a big deal amongst Jehovah's Witnesses.
To be fair, the final episode of MASH was that same night, coincidentally.
Yeah.
Nobody was there. Crime stopped for 31 minutes in America.
I thought that was Crime Stopped for 5 minutes in America when the Beatles were on Ed Sullivan.
That's true.
Or is that Nobody Cried for 5 minutes?
I was just making a roundabout reference to that.
Okay.
I don't know if that's actually ever been proven to be true.
Yeah, I don't think so.
This story is still about Nick Keogh, but ties into nothing we've already talked about. I just wanted to get out there, which is why it's the only note I have written down.
Is it the time he threw a cert at his dad and he said, "You're busted"?
But that's better.
No, please, go ahead.
But you'll know the story as soon as I start telling it. We never went to high school, but Nick did. And I think it was his first day as a freshman in high school. And you know how I didn't know because we never went to public high school, but they do that lame thing where it's your first day of school. Everybody that's new, you're going to know everybody's name in class. Everybody individually stands up. You go in a circle and says their name and something about themselves.
Yeah.
And that's all it was, I guess. And so I wasn't there. But
sometimes they pass around a roll of toilet paper, and however many squares you pick off, that's how many things you have to say about yourself. And I think that's a power trip to, for the jackass kids that grab, half a roll. Good, now you get to stand up for this long. and
I've
talk.
never heard that before.
That happened once in school because I was a jackass. I grabbed like nine squares, and then like I just, as soon as the teacher said that's how many things you have to say, like
You
I ripped
pocketed
one
7 of
off
them?
and threw the rest in my pocket.
So yeah, like I said, we weren't there. We just heard the account later. But I imagine it's stuff like, "Hey, my name's Julie and I'm from Missouri."
Yeah.
Something like that.
I like to water ski.
Then it gets to Nick, who's probably hornier than he's ever been at 16. And I'm sure he's thinking about what everybody is thinking about him. And he has plenty of time. I think they went alphabetically, and he starts with a K. So he's got plenty of time to think about what he's going to say.
He hears a couple examples first.
Sure,
And goes this
sure.
direction.
And maybe some class clowns got a couple of laughs.
I like to just say I also like whatever else somebody else just said. That's what I was going to say.
So it gets to Nick, and verbatim, apparently, this is how it went. Stands up. "Hey, my name is Nick Keogh, and my favorite animal is the koala bear." And then somebody, without taking a second to breathe, stands up and says, "You look like a koala bear." And then
Nick was destroyed. I'm sure he still thinks about that.
So, yeah, high school was ruined for him on the very first day because of that one jackass, and then he would tell it to us, like, we would just find ways to bring that up, just to say it. "Hey, Nick, do you want to supersize this meal?" "You look like a koala bear."
And he did always want a supersize and an extra large fries.
"Mom, I'm serious." Whenever his mom was taking a fast food order when we were hanging out, "I'm going to McDonald's. What do you guys want?" "Make sure you get 2 orders of fries, Mom. I don't want to share with Pat."
I'm not getting you extra fries. Mom, get an extra large fry. And sometimes him and Pat, in addition to their meals, would share a 20-piece nuggets.
Pat was a fat ass, but Nick was never that big. And now Pat's skinny too and has a beard.
Yeah, he
Fucking
looks
pisses me
he looks
off.
pretty awesome. He
Yeah.
probably has stretch marks though.
I got a Pat Keogh story. Just one more. Pat Keogh, always a strange dude, but and it ties into fast food too. Like I remember they were coming over to hang out with us and getting dropped off by their parents. And apparently on the way, they'd asked Nick and Pat if what they wanted to eat, like for fast food on the way. And I think Pat wanted KFC, but Nick wanted burgers. And Nick wanted out whatever it was. They ended up going to Jack in the Box. And Pat could not be more pissed off. Like because we asked, because we show up and Pat's just got a scowl on his face. We've never seen him so pissed. And it's because he didn't get his Jack in the Box way. And then what was the thing that was said? How did he snap at his parents?
They were like, "We're going to Jack in the Box," and he goes, "I don't want Jack in the Box. It's more like Jack in the Crap." And then she was like, "Well, I'm going to order you 2 hamburgers. If you order me a hamburger, I'm going to throw it right in your face."
I knew I would laugh too hard. in this
And
episode.
Nick was making fun of Pat, and his mom says, "Nikki, you were the same way when you were going through puberty."
They're always making excuses for how weird their kids are. That's their kids are only so weird because they're so fucking weird.
Yeah.
Oh God, that was a weird family. I'm crying. I'm laughing so hard.
And then I don't know the story of how he met Logan's mother, but
Just MySpace. It's the only way I know.
He's married now.
And isn't it appropriate that he legitimately named his kid
Logan, after all those years of wanting to be Wolverine. And I bet he hopes the kid is Harry now. He has to be to live up to that name.
Have you seen recent pictures of the kid? It seems like I checked out his
really.
MySpace right when it happened, when the baby just looks like a fucking 6-pound alien.
I like to see the picture of like Doug, their dad, like 15 years older than the last time I've seen him, or however long it's been. Not that long, but
and he's gray and bald and got a gut.
he's not bald, but he's gray and pretty fat.
And Pat got skinny. It's funny how things work.
Yeah.
I'll bet Pat's getting laid by the handful.
I don't know. I don't think so. I
don't think
he's
so
still
either.
Probably.
I hope so, though.
I wonder if they still all live in that studio that Nick's wife just kind of moved in with them.
And the kid?
Yeah.
That would be obnoxious.
Clearly, it didn't happen.
PJ, I don't understand
do
your
you
sense
think
of humor.
it might be a joke that I'm making?
Sometimes
a delightful picture painting of that dysfunctional family.
And a hilarious sitcom.
Yeah.
Sometimes I don't know when you're joking anymore. I think we've been doing this for too long. Maybe it's time to call it quits.
Yeah, maybe I need to grin really large after I've told a joke.
Or just say joke.
Are you saying that my jokes are sarcastic and pithy?
Yeah. Pithy is the perfect word.
Pithy.
Pithy
Right.
is PJ.
I don't want to go down the road. I don't want to be that comedian.
Yeah, did you think it was weird when Sue Grafton wrote that book about you? P is for pithy, or PJ is for pithy. I also had a Sue Grafton reference written down, so I'm glad I got that out of the way.
And it is for Nick Keough.
Yeah.